You're listening to the Empowered Divorce Podcast, where you practice being the chooser in your life again, one day at a time. Thanks for joining me. Hello, my amazing, beautiful listeners. Welcome, new listeners. It's been amazing to see the podcast community growing, and so keep sharing with others and leaving reviews. I know that's an Apple podcast thing, although you can still leave comments in Spotify, but if you head over to the Apple podcast and put in a review, it helps so much to get this support available to more women who are navigating divorce that has this added element of betrayal and abuse along with it. Because it's not the same. It's not the same divorce, and it usually is not amicable. And so let's help them feel not so alone, which that's what we're talking about today, is loneliness and feeling alone and the fear of being alone. So what does loneliness feel like to you? Maybe it's those nights when you're alone, the kids are in bed, it's super quiet. What's that feeling that you have inside? Or maybe you're going to a party or a family get together and you realize that you don't have anybody beside you for the first time in years. And this feeling of loneliness comes over you like a giant wave on a shore that just crashes down on you. You tumble into the surf, struggling and gasping for breath. It can feel that intense. Loneliness whispers lies to you like, no one will ever want to be with me. I'm too much baggage. Or there's no one to protect me. I'm unlovable. Most of the day, we can ignore these feelings because you're so busy with work and running errands. But at night, when no one is around, perhaps the kids are with the other parent, loneliness sweeps in and again crushes you. And you sit there alone in misery while other people continue on their happy lives. Loneliness sucks you dry. It empties you and takes away your ability to cope, wondering if you'll ever be happy again. And if you'll ever feel like someone cares about you, worries about you, wonders about you. These fears are natural and normal to feel after deep betrayal and divorce. And many people who are going through a life-saving divorce feel this loneliness intensely. I hear these kinds of stories all the time, these fears, and I have felt these feelings myself as well. And today, my hope is not only to validate what you might be going through, but give you some things to consider, to practice, to help you move through this and into having an empowered divorce. There are a few truths about loneliness that I want to offer you here to consider. First of all, healing takes time. And the first year is the worst. You will feel as though, again, the earth is swallowing you up and you feel like you've got more than you could possibly handle. And the truth is loneliness will reduce as you spend time with people who are safe, who are caring, people that will help pull you up out of that pit. Loneliness makes you feel insecure and wanting that affirmation and outside validation. It also makes you lower your romantic standards when you're dating. You violate your values, your boundaries, because the desperation to not be alone forces you to get involved with someone that isn't safe. Loneliness wants to isolate you. So instead of finding others who understand the pain of divorce, loneliness wants to pull you away from people, believing that no one else understands, no one gets it, no one believes you. So instead, you find others who do understand, who have walked the path, because there are many who have walked in your shoes. So truly, you're not alone. Healing from deep loneliness requires you to not be passive, to find new friends, to be creative, find new activities, safe places to share your story with others. It requires you to take initiative and move one foot in front of the other because no one is going to do it for you. There will be people out there who will help walk alongside you. The first steps are yours. Remember, you had the courage and the strength to get that life-saving divorce. So you have the courage and the strength to rebuild your life one step at a time. Maybe looking for hobbies, new hobbies, things that interest you now, finding others that share in those interests, support groups, connections. Even serving others are ways to find connection towards yourself and with other people. One of the amazing gifts that I had in my journey along the way through my job, because I had a housekeeping business and I did work in a lot of people's homes, and a lot of those women that were there while I cleaned became incredible support to help me not feel so alone. They heard my story, they saw me, they empathized with me, they encouraged, validated. That played a vital role in me being able to move out of that deep despair of loneliness. I also, because I was in a new state, was able to find new things that interested me. I made it a goal to find a new hiking trail every weekend that I didn't have the kids. The more I talked about finding new places to hike, the more people wanted to hike with me. So I was able to make connections in those different interests and hobbies. Finding safe people to help you grieve, help you really lick your wounds when you have those moments where that tidal wave of you're alone smacks you in the face when you don't even expect it. I remember one time after a Sunday church meeting, I found myself in the foyer after the meeting talking with a bunch of different people. And as their partners came up and found them, soon the conversation turned into plans to go to dinner before an upcoming conference. And it was so interesting. And I don't know if those of you who can see me on YouTube or not, but here we were standing in a circle talking amongst each other. And before I knew it, the circle just started to shift. And all of a sudden, everyone's starting to turn towards each other as couples started to arrive. And I literally was shut out of the conversation and I'm standing there alone because they were talking about going as couples to dinner before this conference. Well, I didn't have a partner. So I didn't have anything to say. And just naturally, and I don't think they were intending to do any harm, but there I was standing there on the outside of this circle of couples, and I was not included in those plans. Talk about a tidal wave of loneliness smacking me in the face, throwing me into the sand. I'm eating sand. And I was able to go to my parents' house and bless their hearts how many times I did this. And they were safe enough to let me cry and grieve and sob and vent all the things because those very hard things happen, especially in that first year, because you're really hypersensitive to all of it. When you have the tidal wave of loneliness hit you, what are those actions that you notice yourself taking immediately after that wave hits? So let me back up to that story again, because if I'm going to be really honest, before I went to my parents' house, I actually went to the grocery store, bought an 8-pack of drumstick ice cream cones, and sat in the car by myself eating all 8, crying, sobbing, stuffing my face. Hence my binge eating disorder that I developed through all of this trauma. That was the action that I took. Now, another question to ask yourself is what do you expect to get out of those behaviors that you initially take when that tidal wave of loneliness hits? Well, for me, walking into that grocery store, I was wanting to lick my wounds. I was wanting to feel comfort. I was wanting to numb out. I didn't want to feel what I had just felt. And then the third question, what did you notice come out of the behavior instead of what you expected? Well, I expected to feel a little bit better. I expected to not feel so much intense pain. But what came out of that was more suffering because I really didn't want to eat all 8 of those drumstick ice cream cones. I didn't feel good. I felt sick. I wanted to throw up after, the worse about myself. And then that's when I went over to my parents' house. So taking time to slow this down and really drop into that pillar of awareness. What are the immediate actions I take when that tidal wave hits me? This is where you're going to notice a lot of those reactive firefighter parts that get involved, like the binge eating, numbing out to Netflix, and other self-destructive behaviors, thinking that we're going to feel better and get some sort of escape. But the reality is you feel worse. So we just want to slow that down and see what exactly is the coping mechanism there. Remember, living with a partner in a marriage that was unhealthy and abusive and still feeling alone is much more damaging than being by yourself in a home that is safe and stable and supports your healing. Loneliness after divorce is independence and liberation waiting to spark hope. But deep down, you want to be wanted again, or maybe for the first time. You know that you're not ready to date, but you want someone to want you, to hold your hand, to take your call when you're having a bad day, who lights up when you walk in a room. And healthy dating won't work if you haven't healed the wounds from before, during, or after divorce. This means you're exceptionally raw. Your perspective is shot. You're highly susceptible to feeling rejected because you're already rejecting yourself first by shaming and judging yourself in this stage of being alone. The judgment and lies that come when being on your own is interpreted by your brain as you're going to be alone forever, and it's sad and pathetic. Lies. So overcoming loneliness comes when you learn how to be on your own rather than being alone. When I'm working with women who are contemplating divorce, they are often paralyzed with the fears of being on their own. And yes, the fears of being lonely are there too, but it's more about being on their own. It gets camouflaged. And so they'll say, I just don't want to be alone, but they don't know how to be on their own. They don't know how to do things on their own. Like, how am I going to repair things in the house? How will I handle finances? How will I get a job and raise kids on my own? All of these fears of being on their own is keeping them stuck in abusive and unhealthy relationships, keeping them from moving forward, because deep down there's this lack of confidence in being able to be on their own. And so it feels lonely. Grief, isolation, and separation that comes with divorce results also in loneliness. When you can no longer relate to those in your family, even because they are all with their partners at the table and the conversations are mostly centered around couples issues. So you are no longer relating, or you're no longer relating to church sermons and Sunday school lessons. When family and friends that you shared in the marriage are separated from you now and even against you, misjudging you, you feel lonely. The losses, countless losses that you have through this journey, loss of dreams. And included in that dream is the one where you grew old with someone, where the story was that you raised children and then travel and explore the world and grandchildren together in the later years of life. Except that is not the whole story. There are most often earlier wounds. It may feel even deeper than lonely, like emptiness. This type of early emptiness, loneliness goes hand in hand with an anxious attachment style. Your first thought that you have when you feel that tidal wave of loneliness is what you've been conditioned to think, what's coming from earlier childhood abandonment experiences. But what you choose to think next is what helps define your next right step forward. It's what helps create what you want to experience in the future. The deep, early subconscious thoughts that come from childhood wounds are, again, those first thoughts. Thoughts like, make sure you do the things to make them happy, because if they're not happy with you, they leave and you're alone. Or don't argue with them or make a big deal about this, because then they'll leave and you'll be alone. Deep beliefs that you, just as you are, is not enough to be loved. So the hustle to be more, do more, know more, have more is lies that says then you'll be lovable and not be alone. Healing the tidal wave of loneliness requires you to also heal the whole story, the story that came with you into that relationship. I love helping women heal from anxious attachment because it brings them back towards themselves in a way that has been neglected for decades even. I love showing them that they truly are enough, just as they are, no matter what. They cannot be less or even better, because who they really are is 100% of worth and value. This inner healing that's been missing for years or their whole lives sets them up to be on their own. And it ensures that when and if they choose to have another romantic relationship in the future, it will be a healthy one. In order to have a future you want, it's time to start being more aware of those unhealthy things that you've been doing to avoid loneliness. Let's get curious about that. See if any of these resonate with you. Remember, none of them are inherently wrong or bad or say anything about who you intrinsically are, but they are clues, information that we want to get curious about, these behaviors that block your ability to really feel confident in being on your own and move you out of that loneliness. So, how have you been dealing with loneliness during or after divorce? Maybe you've been overworking, overfunctioning, maybe filling every spare moment that you have with an activity. So, stopping and slowing down, it's a no go because you're just going to stay busy, busy, busy. Maybe you're buying things for yourself or your kids. Maybe so your kids will feel better and not so alone. Maybe you're drinking more, spending more time on TikTok, Netflix. Maybe you are chronically helping other people. That's a thing. Overthinking, overanalyzing. Maybe you are unhealthy dating and being hypersexual to fill that void of being alone. Obsessing over your ex and maybe his new fling. How many of you have become detectives and find out all the things that you can about this new fling, down to Google mapping where they live? And before you feel shame about that, just ask yourself how I might know to mention that. Just saying. Any of those resonate with you? How many of you are doing those? How many of those are helping you deal with that loneliness? So we overcome loneliness and step into independence of being on your own confidently with 3 steps: awareness, acceptance, and agency. Awareness of the initial thoughts that come up, which are deep and driving that feeling of lonely. You can become more aware of those through thought dumping, journaling, being curious and listening to what's coming up for you, listening to your thoughts, your feelings in your body, being aware of the triggers that bring on that tidal wave of loneliness. If you're on Facebook and seeing how everyone is happy and perfect, cough, cough, sets you off, then this is a big awareness. What are those thoughts that immediately arise when you look through those posts? What thoughts are deep? What thoughts are not yours? Then acceptance and learning from what you've just become aware of. What is it showing you? What is it teaching you about yourself, about your past, and your lived experience today? Acceptance, remember, is free of self-judgment, shame, and blame because it's going to show you what is, shows you things as they really are. And now we step into your agent power mode. Now we can make the shift. It doesn't matter how small, it's a shift towards what changes everything. The shift is the second thought and directs your next wise step forward. It's what you want to think, what you want to feel, and what you want to choose to do. Now that you're aware and you're learning more about your experiences with social media and all the other things, and how it's perpetuating the feelings of loneliness and beliefs that you're not enough and will forever be alone, what shift do you want to choose to make? How can you be the chooser of your experience and choose to experience something different? Okay. The last offering here. Ask yourself, who am I when I am most happy, when I feel the most centered, when I feel the most like me? With these questions, you are practicing to access the self-love mindset. This is a shift that gears you back towards yourself and learning how to become that healthy version of you. Because whether you're married or not, you need to be able to be on your own, in your own right. This is what makes having an interdependent relationship possible. I am most happy and centered and grounded and feel more like really my true self when I'm outdoors, doing something with my body, walking, hiking, kayaking, fishing. I am most happy when I'm reading a good book. I'm most happy when I'm in a coffee shop, observing people or reading a book. I'm most happy exploring small town bookstores and boutiques. I am most happy when I'm walking around a farmer's market and trying new things. I am most happy when I am at my gym and I'm sweating and not thinking about anything and anybody but my body and how it's feeling stronger. Discovering what brings you back towards you and what makes you happy doesn't have to cost money. It does, however, mean that you will have to be introspective and honest with yourself. It can be hard to dig deep, but I promise you that it is worth it because you connecting back towards you is worth it. You're worth it. Another thing to ask yourself is, what can I do right now to tap into that amazing part of me? That part of me that will help me through those periods of loneliness. Again, we're tapping into this love mindset. The next time you see another Facebook picture of an engagement ring, you can call a friend that you know who could use a friendly hello. Your time and energy are better served helping those in need. When the house feels so empty and you start to feel alone, tapping into the love mindset is remembering maybe that there's a new museum or exhibit that you've been wanting to see. And so you make that shift and check the hours of when you're going to go tomorrow, recognizing that you deserve to be learning how to spend this quality time by yourself, with yourself, doing things that inspire you, excite you, connect you back towards you, and making healthy connections with others, being open to wonderful things that the world can offer, fully acknowledging that you are in this world and you are designed to create and explore all of it. This is the antidote to loneliness. When you begin the love story with yourself, you always have someone by your side. Nothing can or will take the place of connecting back towards you and learning to be with yourself, for yourself, on your own, even in a relationship. That is what healthy looks like. In my Intimacy Within Self-Paced course, you can explore those 7 different levels of intimacy. And I cannot stress enough how awesome the results can be when you learn what healthy looks like in all of those levels and you start to create that for yourself. Because it's what either was never developed or lost in the destructive marriage, this disconnect from yourself. It feels lonely because all the other parts of you that have been hustling for the attention, the validation, the affection are exhausted as they have been looking outside, away from capital U, Y-O-U. They are turned away from you, the real, whole, complete, lovable you. They're looking at all the external things. And until they can stop looking outside of you and look towards you, they will feel lonely. How many of you remember the children's book, The Monster at the End of This Book? I'll put a link in the show notes for it. If you have never read it or seen it, you've got to get it, especially if you have kids. It's really cute. But the Sesame Street monster Grover is the main character in this book, and he is aware that there will be a monster at the end of this book. And he pleads with the reader to not turn the pages. And so he tries tying the pages together, he tries nailing them together, and he even builds a brick wall. But each time the reader of the book is able to turn the page, and Grover isn't too happy about it. And so the fear, the anxiety builds and builds the closer and closer the reader gets to the end of the book. Because what will Grover find at the end of the book? The paralyzing fear that builds and builds as we fear what's to come at the end of our story. We fear the monster of loneliness. And so we build walls and we nail up boards and we keep from turning the pages. And we do everything we can to keep from turning the pages of the story, your story. Staying busy and overfunctioning and avoid turning those pages. Ignoring, avoiding, numbing out to turning the pages because we fear the monster at the end of the book. So when Grover is begging and pleading the reader to not turn the last page because there's a monster at the end of this book, there's a build of the anticipation of what might happen, and heart races and a sense of curiosity comes along with it. Whether Grover likes it or not, the reader of the book turns the page. And what does Grover find? Himself. He is the monster at the end of the book. It's who he is. He is the furry, lovable monster at the end of the book. And he was so worried this whole time that it would be something scary. Ladies, you are at the end of your story. You are your happily ever after, and you are the lovable you at the end of it all. The real key to overcoming the fear of loneliness is to not abandon you, to not be afraid of being with you. Stop building the walls and nailing up boards that keep you away from yourself. Break those down and see into yourself, love yourself, and know that you are enough to make the ending of your story beautiful, just as you are. What you choose to experience along the way is not what's at the end of the story. At the end of the story, it's about how much you've learned about yourself in all that you've experienced. And today is the day to choose you, one step at a time, one day at a time, because you can. Take care, everybody. Head over to the show notes to click on the link Intimacy Within Self-Paced course and start today. And also don't forget the next Dating from Within workshop, Learning How to Date Yourself, starts January 25th. Get your spot for that today, also in the show notes. Take care, everybody.
Was born to fly and spread the